Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we'll see the Queen as a mother. Before Elizabeth became Queen, she got married to Philip in 1947, and 1 year later she had Charles. Well, Elizabeth wasn't a queen yet, but she and Philip had royal responsibilities. And then they had to do a lot of traveling, so Charles was left at home and raised by nannies. In a 2002 interview with BBC, the Princess Anne said, "We as children may not have been too demanding in the sense that we understand what the limitations were in time and the responsibilities placed on her as monarch and the things she had to do and the travel she had to make. But I don't believe any of us for a second thought she didn't care for us exactly the same way as any other mother did." The princess says she does not understand people who ask her if she sees the Queen as her mother or as a monarch. "She's my mother and the Queen." According to CheatSheet.com, royal historian and advisor for the Netflix The Crown, Robert Lacey, explained the Queen may not have seen anything wrong with her absence because that's how she was raised. She had been brought up in the style herself, and after all, with her parents leaving her at home and entrusting her entire schooling to a governess and home tutors, he told Town and Country. And Lord Mountbatten, Prince Philip's uncle, said that the Queen's favorite night of the week was Mabel's night off. So Mabel was the nanny to both Charles and Anne as children, and when Nanny Mabel was off duty, Elizabeth could kneel beside the tub, bathe her babies, read to them, and put them to bed herself, he said. So Charles was born on November the 14th, 1948. Anne was born on August the 15th, 1950. Prince Andrew was born on February 19th, 1960. And that's almost 10 years after Princess Anne was born. And then Prince Edward was born on March 10th, 1964. So there's quite a gap in the ages there. The Queen was especially busy during the time she had Prince Charles and Princess Anne. And by the time she had Andrew and Edward, she was settled in as a queen and could spend more time with her children. Well, Charles felt that his mother wasn't indifferent, but detached, and he wanted more affection from her. He felt a close bond to his grandmother, the Queen Mother, and when he was at her funeral, he stated that his grandmother meant everything to him, and he adored her since childhood. According to page6.com, the Queen became more relaxed and consistently engaged mother with her second set of children. Some critics have questioned whether she indulged Andrew and Edward too much, making up for not having spent more time with her older children. And she was a bit more playful with Andrew and Edward. Andrew, her favorite, according to ReadersDigest.com. Andrew was born when Elizabeth had already been queen for 8 years, allowing her time to relax and take time off. And she took 18 months off after Andrew's birth and enjoyed taking care of him herself, a luxury she didn't have with Charles and Anne. It's also said that Andrew's birth marked a new era for Elizabeth and Philip's marriage, with Andrew as her so-called love child. Charles went to boarding school. Prince Philip wanted to toughen up Charles, so he sent him to a boarding school that Prince Philip went to, Gordonstown, in the remote part of Scotland. There were 2 times that Charles was ill, but the Queen didn't go to see him. The first time was in 1957 when he had the flu, and the Queen sent him a letter and then went to Canada for a royal tour, and the same happened 4 years later, but this time the Queen was in India and had to do her queenly duties. I know the Queen probably felt bad about not seeing him, but he had to be in good care at the school, and this was at a time in her life where she had very many responsibilities, and she wasn't one to shirk her duties. Her parents had been the same way, and when she was a child, and she never felt neglected. It's just how things were. In his controversial 1994 authorized biography of Prince Charles, Jonathan Dimbley quoted the Prince of Wales saying it was inevitably the nursery staff who taught him to play, witnessed his first steps, and punished and rewarded him. And in a recent biography of Prince Charles, Sally Bedell Smith shares a similar view. When Elizabeth became queen on the death of her father, her dedication to her duties meant even less time for her children, the historian wrote. She relied increasingly on her husband to make the major family decisions, and she was dependent on nannies to supervise their daily lives. Bedell Smith added that the Queen and the Duke saw the children after breakfast and tea time, but in the manner of the upper class, neither of them were physically demonstrative. Well, the Queen did some things differently than the royals before had done. One thing was to breastfeed all her kids. She did away with the archaic practice of the crown, which required formal bows from her children when they entered a room she was in. And I could see where that would not have been necessary for her to have them do that. The holidays were special, according to usmagazine.com, and recalled in a BBC September 2022 program, a tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. Her parents were able to spend more time with their children when they were away on holiday, and the holiday times were pretty well kept, actually, from our perspective, noting that Elizabeth and Philip were nearly always around. The late Queen loved her getaways, partly because it included all the things she enjoyed, including the countryside, the dogs, the horses, and just being out and about and being able to get away a bit from the public gaze. And Prince Edward, he was the youngest son of the Queen, and she was 47 when she had him and asked Philip to be with her when she had him. She had read in magazines about the importance of involving fathers in childbirth and had become fascinated by the idea. Prince Philip was holding her hand when Edward was born. She would say to the nannies at times, "Leave him here with me," and he would be on the floor playing while she worked at her desk on her state papers. And Prince Edward's wife Sophie was close to Queen Elizabeth, and Sophie filled the void the Queen felt after the death of her mother and her sister, because they both died in 2002. First of all, the show The Crown made Queen Elizabeth appear as sure of herself, but in reality she was afraid of becoming a parent. In time, she became more sure of herself, and with each child she became more confident. The Queen had her hands full in those early years of parenthood, and she had to become Queen, and she had so many duties to take care of. She turned to Prince Philip to make the decisions in the family, and she needed the nannies to care for the children and their daily needs. As I said before, she saw the kids at breakfast and tea time. There wasn't a lot of physical attention, but that's how it was with the upper class, and it can be that way with regular class too. I know our family wasn't openly affectionate, but we all loved each other very much. So Queen Elizabeth was also there for the kids in the middle of the night if they needed her. There was a lot of trips that the prince and the Queen had to take during the tours of other countries, and at one point they were gone almost 6 months, and that was when Anne and Charles were small. And when they returned, the Queen thought they were being overly polite with her and Philip, but shortly thereafter the kids went back to being family again. So Elizabeth didn't leave them in the palace because they would be a nuisance or a distraction for her. Instead, she worried it would be disruptive for the children, and she wanted them to have a normal schedule. The Queen liked upholding traditions. When Queen Elizabeth II and her family decorated one of their several Christmas trees, they included glass angels that were once owned by Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth's great-great-grandmother. Another tradition she upheld was having 3 fir trees in the Marble Hall in Buckingham Palace, a tradition that was popularized by Queen Charlotte. She also loved corny jokes, and it's a tradition to pop Christmas crackers during the holiday, and each one has a corny joke inside. Apparently, the Queen insisted on reading all the jokes out loud herself, creating a sweet family tradition. And the Queen, she loved being a mother, according to MapleandMoxie.com, and a letter written 2 weeks after Prince Edward was born to the nanny, Mabel Anderson. This was a nanny to all 4 of Elizabeth's children. Queen Elizabeth shared the joys of motherhood. The baby is flourishing and gaining weight splendidly, and he's a great joy to us, especially to Andrew, who is completely fascinated by him. In fact, he considers him his own property, even telling Charles and Anne to come and see my baby. Goodness, what fun it is to have a baby in the house again. Queen Elizabeth sounded like a great mother. She was raised with nannies, but she knew her parents loved her, and she would always have that special bond with her family. And the same could be said of Queen Elizabeth with her kids and their relationship with her. Charles sounded a little sad that he didn't have enough of his mother's attention, but as he grew older, he could probably see why that happened. All of her other kids felt like she was a wonderful mom, and they all realized she was both queen and a mother, and she balanced the two and handled it all with grace and love. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, that would be great. And if you haven't subscribed yet, that would be good if you could. So I hope everybody's been having a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.